Have you failed at anything in your life? Great, then this podcast is for you. My name is Jan Crystal, and I'm an entrepreneur who has failed many times. The good thing is, I learned from every time I failed. Join me as I talk with experts in their respective fields on how they were able to elevate from failure. On this first episode, we'll dive into the dark side of mental health in sports. I'm your host, Jan Crystal, and today our guest is Dwayne Morton, a former international basketball player who teaches people how to overcome adversity. So for this next portion, we're going to talk about love. And going back to that post with Andrei Rublev, he obviously loves tennis. He's a nice guy off the court. So I wanted to ask Dwayne about what he loves about his sport, about the things he loves in life, but maybe when that can take a dark turn and you want something so much, like you want to win a championship, you want to get a scholarship or whatever that is, turn dark when things don't go your way. So Dwayne, would you like to talk about that, kind of the positive and negative of the love of the sport and what you do?
Yeah, so the positive part for me is I grew up shooting basketball, and when I was 4 years old, the basketball goal, you couldn't change the height of it. So I was always shooting at a 10-foot goal. And so at 4 years old, like I had goals of like just hitting the net and then hitting the rim and then, it going in and then it went in more and more and more. And so I tell people that's where I fell in love. And that's also where I got my resiliency and persistence. But what it prepared me for was life, just life in general, is like going through those motions of, uh, especially as an adult, when you get the unexpected bill, for me, it was getting the diagnosis, for me, the shooting. And so we have to prepare ourselves for those types of situations, but we have to realize that I've already went through something that I didn't think I'd make it through probably a couple weeks ago or a couple of years ago at least. I mean, but just think about the high school student that drops their tray out in front of the cafeteria, or someone who says that tells somebody a secret and says that they like somebody, and how that was just so devastating, right? Like
Yeah.
people get over stuff. Is that so? There's a negative and there's a positive. We are so much into our own limiting beliefs that we are the ones that limit ourselves. And so when you start looking at it from, okay, this is just being uncomfortable, and being uncomfortable is fine. That's actually really good. You don't want to stay in your comfort zone. And so I think that unfortunately with some athletes is they feel like they're ill prepared for some of other people's life conditions. So I always tell people all the time, your nightmares is someone else's dreams. And so for me, that was one of the things that I learned when I played overseas. I met this boy who was 5 years old and he hadn't eaten in 3 days. Like for me, it was heartbreaking, but it allowed me to really start that foundation of gratitude. And I feel like sometimes some of these athletes need to be reminded of just how good they do have it. And I'm not saying that they don't have challenges, because that's true. They do have challenges, but they just have to put it into that kind of scale to realize that they can go through it.
If you are tuning into this podcast episode, chances are you are a busy person. If you are tired of the same old dinners, then try making Spanish tapas the authentic way with Chef Delgado's masterclass. The link in the description box below will give you lifetime access to a step-by-step course with 9 video classes. I've taken this course myself and I've wowed friends and family with delicious shareable tapas. Thank you, Chef Delgado, for sponsoring this podcast, and I hope you enjoy this episode.
Yeah, and I think some people handle it better than others. Like in tennis, there are players, I would say like the Polish players, who just have a calm, chill demeanor. And yeah, they may get angry when, they lose or something, but it's not to the extreme of maybe the American players or even like the Russian players. Those are just generalizations. But when I played, I don't think I mastered the mental game of tennis. And it really is like 60% mental toughness, 40% physical. What would you say to people who, but that could be a limiting belief too. Like,
It,
oh,
it,
I'm this way and I've always been this way. Um, so if I I'm losing, then all those things will those thoughts will spiral.
Yeah, so I mean, it is a limited belief. You have to understand everybody has them, and when you understand everyone has them, what you need to do is be more aware of which ones you have, and just instead of a level 10, make it to a level 9 and go down and make it where it's more and more comfortable part. And so all athletes are human beings. And like when you look at it that way, is that they have challenges that other people may not have, but they have opportunities that other people may not have. And so it kind of offsets when you start really looking at it. It's yes, they're playing a kids game, and that's I'm looking at it from a sports fan perspective.
Yeah.
Right now, well, they make a lot of money. They do this. They get this opportunity. They play a kids game. All these things, right? But then the other flip side of it is it's not easy. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of eyes on them. So it balances out when you really look at it. But me looking back, I had a very strong mindset. I also was very grounded. And so I feel like some of these athletes need to be a little bit more grounded
Mhm.
and to hire someone that can help them get through it. Allow them to get their emotions out, validate those emotions because those emotions need to be validated probably more than ever because and explain, have somebody explain why those emotions are coming out and then work through them. But I feel like when you start going and you start getting into like other problems like addiction, like drinking, doing drugs, those type of things, and like it goes over a consistent period, what are you doing? You're creating a habit. And guess what? Athletes are creatures of habit. And
Yeah.
so that's the other thing is you made the addiction because you started doing this consistently. And then you start thinking, oh, I got to have this to do this. It's very superstitious. Also, that's the other thing is most athletes are very superstitious. So
Yeah.
if I have a good game and I just drink until I like till 3 o'clock in the morning, then I'm gonna think, oh, I can do that again. And I feel like that's the other thing is we need to tone down expectations and quit putting them onto results. Like I would know if I had a good game how I shot the ball. I would know my mechanics were good, and the result didn't always mean the mechanics were off either. That's the other thing. I've had games where I had good games and my mechanics were off. I looked at the video and I was like, I didn't do this and this. And that's the other thing is as athletes, we scrutinize ourselves or we're one of our hardest critics.
Yeah.
And so when you start piling that on and piling on the negative part, you have to be able to turn that notch over to the positive side too, and so you can build that back up. And so I feel like sports is a wonderful thing. It teaches you a lot of wonderful things, but there's also a lot of pitfalls out there too. And so it really takes an athlete who really understands it all. And if they don't understand it all, it's really nice to have like a sports psychologist or a mental performance coach to be able to explain and to help them get through it.
And I think it can be hard to admit that you need that help. Yeah.
Because you don't need it on court, right? And so you don't feel like you need it in life. That's the other part. It's like it needs to be something that they learn from a coach at an early age to be like it's okay to go to someone else and to be a mentor and stuff like that. I feel like that's really part of the issue that we have with youth sports is they don't emphasize certain things that would really make the journey a lot simpler.
So the last part is elevate. I think you've had some great tips with getting help and then taking it step by step. But is there anything else that you can suggest maybe for recreational athletes or for business owners or students or something? Maybe people who know that they're stuck or something like that, or know that they get angry and it costs them relationships, which, can also parallel, costing them matches or games. Do you have any tips on how someone can elevate their mental strategy?
Absolutely. This is a great question, which actually I'll lead into part of my program, and I'll actually give the listeners a PDF of this right here. So I came up with Dwayne's daily plan of attack. It's just my morning routine, and it's on these 4 very simple steps, but I do these every day. And so those little 4 steps create such a great positive habit. And so the very first thing I do is I wake up and I thank God for giving me the day, like just for waking me up. There's so many other people that do not get that opportunity. And so when you look at it from that sense, like it's such a beautiful thing. So my number one step is going to be gratitude. And so my number two thing is like I played a lot of basketball, so I am constantly, I feel beat up from all that basketball all those years. And so I stretch. I also pop my back while I'm laying in bed. And maybe that's for you, maybe it's something else, but my number two step is self-care. And so, for some people it might be just to read a motivational quote or something like that, or an affirmation. And so that would be number two. My number two step is self-care. So my number three step is movement. And so I take a runner's type mentality to approach to this. And so I'm not focused on the past because that will make me depressed. I'm not focused on the future because that will make me anxious. Same thing when I'm running, I can't look backwards. I can glance, but I can't just look. I'm not going to go anywhere. Same thing when I'm going forward, I'm going to lose my direction. And so it's really the present. And I mean, I always say the present is the gift. So I stay in that presence part and I take through the rest of the day, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. And throughout those days, and it makes everything else come out so much easier. So my number three step is going to be movement. So my number four movement, stick with the runner's mentality, is adaptability. Be adaptable. And so when you're running and you're looking at the ground, there's things that happen. There's rocks. There's obstacles that come in your way.
Mud puddles here in Scotland.
Yes, mud puddles. So I always say potholes. And so my idea of being adaptable is just swerve. Life is going to give you crazy obstacles. It's just part of it. For me, it was a diagnosis, a police shooting. And so I just needed to swerve a little bit more to the left or to the right. And so they weren't just constant center hits. And so you're going to get the unexpected bill. You're going to have something that's going to happen with your partner. You're going to have something that's going to happen that just doesn't go your way. And once you start looking at it as like, is it something can I just move just a little bit so it doesn't take such a hard hit? And so the number four steps is adaptability. And so that is what I would say I give to everybody is that morning routine. And so it's just to get yourself, and this is more mentally prepared for the day.
And I love that. It sounds obvious, but looking at your phone and checking emails or Instagram notifications was not part of that list. And that's probably the hardest thing for me to not do. So I would love to use that list, and I'll have that link in the description below, as well as info on Dwayne and how you can contact him for his services. So thank you so much, Dwayne. You've helped me. I've learned so much from this episode. And again, I think it's so great, the parallels of sports and life, whether, again, you're a student, you're a professional, you're retired. Thank you for tuning in, and I really hope that you've learned a lot from this episode. Please comment, like, and subscribe.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for your listeners for allowing me to share some insights and some mindset tools. And, I would just say apply them and see how they go. And there's going to be some people's life that has heard this and it's going to change their life. And so that's my job, is to inspire other people.
My mindset has just grown so much. So if we can do the same, I think that's success.